are. Animals eat, sleep, mate, and defend. So there are human beings also that only do those four things: eat, sleep, mate, and defend. Right. So then, what differentiates an animal or a human being from an animal? Right. The human being can try and understand what is his relationship, his or her relationship with Krishna or God. And they can engage. So the human being does have limited free will. So that's what you were saying. Human being does have limited free will. The animal is completely controlled by nature, meaning the animal is completely controlled by the super soul. It doesn't really have free will. It's only interested in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, whereas living entity can control eating, sleeping, mating, and defending for a higher purpose in life, such as developing a relationship with Krishna. So, if a human being only eats, sleeps, mates, and defends, and doesn't make any attempt to understand his or her relationship with Krishna, what can we assume about that person? We can assume that that person is not different than an animal, because they're not using their free will to rise above the animal-like behavior of just eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So do you know any human beings that are living like animals? Huh? Yeah. And most human beings are no better than animals, because they're not exercising their free will to choose to become Krishna conscious. They're just doing what the animals do: eat, sleep, mate, and defend. Right. So there are 5 levels of consciousness. This is another thing we discussed last week. There's anamoya, pranamoya, manamoya, jnanamoya, and vijnanamoya. These are 5 levels of consciousness. First level of consciousness is one sees God in the form of food. This is what the animals do. That's their realization of God. They see in terms of food. And there are human beings like that too, that think, the purpose of life is to eat, but they usually end up eating junk. And what do animals eat? Well, most animals eat junk. The ones that are meat eaters, they're just eating junk all the time. Have you ever seen a crow? What does a crow eat? Huh? What's a crow eat? Seeds? It's trash. You ever see crows in India? You always see them around garbage dumps and garbage bins. They're eating. How about here in America? You see crows eating dead bodies on the side of the street. Right? They eat roadkill. What is roadkill? Huh? A car runs over an animal, right? The animal's just there in the middle of the road, dead. Who's eating that? The remains of that animal? Crows. Yeah, you don't see any vultures here. Have you ever seen a vulture in Simamish? You see that in the movies. They don't have any vultures. They have vultures, maybe in wild areas in the United States. They don't have vultures in the cities. You have crows. The crows are the ones that are eating the roadkill. Right? So animals see God in the form of food. And so do kids, like a little baby sees God in the form of food. Whoever, if his mother is breastfeeding the baby considers the mother like God. Then the second level of consciousness is called pranamoya. So when the baby gets a little bit older, it sees that, hey, I got brothers and sisters, and uncles and aunties, and mother and father. So the second level of consciousness is seeing living symptoms. Yes?
What was the first one?
Anamoya, A-N-N-A-M-O-Y-A, meaning you realize God in the form of food. And then second level of consciousness is pranamoya. You see God in the form of living entities. They have consciousness, they move around. The uncle comes and goes goo goo gaga and makes the little baby laugh, and so forth. And then the third level of consciousness is called manamoya. One perceives God in the form of mental capacity, the ability to think and understand things.
What is the third
Manamoya. Man means mind. And then the fourth level is called Vijnanamoya. One begins to understand knowledge about who God is. Vijnanamoya.
Can you repeat the third and the fourth?
The third one is Manamoya. One sees God in the form of the mind and mental capacity. And then Vijnanamoya, one becomes aware of some aspects of God. One begins spiritual life. And then that's Vijnanamoya, Vijnanamoya. And then,
One becomes aware. What's the fourth one?
fourth one is Vijnanamoya. One begins to learn about God. And then the fifth one is called Anandamoya. One develops ecstatic love for God. Anandamoya. So these are five different levels of consciousness that the living entity evolves.
What is the fifth one again?
Anandamoya, A-N-A-N-D-A-M-O-Y-A.
What's the meaning?
Huh?
The meaning.
One develops ecstatic love. Ecstatic love for God. All right, so these are five levels of consciousness. Now, the animals are on the first level, which is seeing God in the form of food. And then a little better than that is seeing God in the form of living entities. And then seeing God in the form of mental activity. and then beginning to learn about who God is, and then developing ecstatic love for God. 644. Okay? This is explained in the 13th chapter, verse number 5. If you open your Bhagavad Gita, 13th, 13th chapter, verse number 5. You open your Bhagavad Gita to the 13th chapter. These are things that we discussed last week. Now, if you weren't here, that's why we're going over it. And I think you received your notes from last week. Is that right? Okay. So let's read 13th chapter, verse number 5. The next to the last paragraph. Who's going to read? Let me raise your hand, huh? 13th chapter, verse number 5. 13th chapter, verse number 5. Who's going to read? You want to read? Okay.
Higher and lower.
No. The next to the last paragraph. As stated before, go ahead.
As stated before, Shastra.
As stated before, Kshetra.
Kshetra is the field of activities, and there are two kinds of Shastrajana.
Kshetra Gya.
Gya.
Are you listening? Are you reading, Omar? You have your Bhagavad Gita open?
We can get you a Bhagavad Gita.
You want to get a Bhagavad Gita? You're the one that got the other ones.
There's no more there.
13th chapter, verse number 5, next to the last paragraph. Go ahead, start over again.
As stated before, Shastra is the field of activities, and there are two kinds of Shastrajana.
Gya. Kshetra Gya.
Shastrajana. The individual living entity and the supreme living entity, as stated in the Tathayatra.
Okay, every time you see a period or a comma, you have to pause.
Okay.
As stated.
As stated in the
Taittiriya
Upanishad, Brahma Pucham Pratishta. There is a manifestation of the Supreme Lord's energy, known as Anamaya. Dependence upon food for existence. This is materialistic realization of the Supreme. Then in the Paramaya, after realizing the Supreme Absolute Truth in food, one can realize the Absolute Truth in the living symptoms or life forms in Jnana-maya. Realization extends beyond the living symptoms to the point of thinking, feeling, and willing. Then there is Brahman realization called Vijnanamaya, in which the living entity's mind and life symptoms are distinguished from the living entity himself. The next and supreme stage is Anandamaya, realization of the all blissful nature. Thus there are 5 stages of Brahman realization, which are called Brahma Pucham. Out of these, the first 3, Anamaya, Pranamaya, and Jnanamaya, involve the fields of activities of the living entities. Transcendental to all these fields of activities is the Supreme Lord, who is called Anandamaya. The Vedanta Sutra also describes the Lord, the Supreme, by saying,
Anandamaya Vyasat.
yeah. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is by nature full of joy. To enjoy his transcendental bliss, he expands into Vijnana Maya, Pranamaya, Yanamaya, and Anandmaya. In the fields of activities, the living entity is considered to be the enjoyer, and different from his in the
And different from him.
From him is the Anandamaya. That means that if the living entity decides to enjoy in dovetailing himself with the Anandamaya, then he becomes perfect. This is the real picture of the Supreme Lord as the supreme knower of the field. The living entity as a subordinate knower and the nature of the field of activities. One has to search for this truth in the Vedanta Sutra or the Brahma Sutra.
Okay, so this might sound a little complicated. It's not. These are 5 levels of consciousness called Brahmapucham. And first 4 are basically mistaken for one's sense gratification. But actually, the source of the pleasure in the first 4 is actually Krishna. But because we remain ignorant of Krishna, we don't realize it. The 5th is Krishna, is understanding Krishna fully and then becoming ecstatic in the service of the Lord. So people are looking pleasure, just like, let's say, on the 4th of July. What was going on at the 4th of July in Sammamish? Let's analyze that. Okay, so Sanskriti. 1. Yes, what were you going to say? What? That's the only thing you saw is fireworks?
No, well, people are dressed in like red, white, blue.
Yeah. Sense gratification in the form of? No, in the form of eating. Yeah, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So people are running around eating, right? Either they brought their own food or they were buying food from the vendors. So that's called anamoya. And they're deriving some pleasure from it, right? Of course, they were making choices whether to eat vegetarian food. Of course, that's what we were offering. Actually, we were not offering vegetarian food. We were offering prasadam. And we discussed that last week also, the difference between prasadam and food. So, and then secondly, they were enjoying seeing other people walking around dressed differently, smiling, joking, talking, jumping up and down, dancing, passing out, whatever they were doing. They were enjoying that. Yes, that's called pranamoya. First thing is anamoya, right? Then there's pranamoya, yes. There was music going on, so it was pleasing to their ears, and then people were jumping. They were going, oh, like this, and moving around like that, and dancing, and right. Did you see anyone dancing?
Yeah, on the stage. They were like jumping around.
Jumping around, yeah. That's called pranamoya. You're seeing the life symptoms. And then people were talking with each other, right? Did you hear anyone talking about Krishna? No, they were talking nonsense, all nonsense things, right? And but, they were interested in hearing each other's nonsense things. Like, did you overhear anyone talking? Did you overhear anyone talking? No? Anyone hear anybody talking?
Oh, I heard my
Yeah.
KP talking.
What?
I heard KP.
KP, what was he saying?
He was talking with his mom, and I want the sword over there.
Oh, the sword that makes a light?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yes. So you see, does that have anything to do with Krishna? No. But that's a mental thought in his mind. You see, that's called Jnanamoya or Manamoya, mental activity. Right? That's the third level. You see, these are different levels of consciousness. You understand? Now, by analyzing what went on at the 4th of July celebration in Sammamish, we can see these different levels of consciousness. Right? First level was? People were eating. Second level was? People were moving. That means they were living symptoms. They were manifesting living systems. And people were interested. They were saying, oh, look, oh, that person's cool. You know, they passed out because they smoked marijuana and they're laying down on the ground right now. And this is really cool, you know, or whatever, right? They were just or oh, look how high that person jumped dancing, you know. So you're seeing living symptoms in people, right? And then the third, KP says, I want that sword, right? So he's expressing a desire. That's a mental platform, right? Actually, people were talking all kinds of nonsense. Right? They were expressing different types of thoughts. And then number 4, they have some concept of God. So someone says, oh, look over there, there's the Hare Krishnas. They're serving vegetarian food. Ha, 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 ha. Right. So that's a little bit of knowledge of God, right? Their idea is, oh, they chant Hare Krishna. And then number 5, though, you have developed real knowledge of God, and you become ecstatic. So the animals, or the animalistic type of relations, consciousness, is the first 4. Because there's no full knowledge of God, but there's some partial knowledge. They see God as food, they see God as the living symptoms, they see God on the mental level, expressing different thoughts, or they see God as light or energy. But when you come to Anandamoya, you have full knowledge of Krishna, you become ecstatic. Now, they're feeling some pleasure in the first 4 levels of consciousness, right? You saw people, they were eating and they're feeling a little happy, and then dancing and walking around and laughing and giggling and whatever. That they're feeling some pleasure there. And number 3, expressing different ideas. I want that sword. I want to buy some cotton candy. I want this. I want that. There's some pleasure there. And then, oh, you know, look at the fireworks. There's so much light. You know, so they fix their consciousness on the light show. All right. So that's a little bit of God consciousness, and they were feeling pleasure from that. But the ultimate pleasure is ecstatic love for Krishna because of full knowledge of the Lord. So these are 5 levels of consciousness. The first floor are mostly on the animal level. Number 4 is there's slight knowledge of God. And number 5 is full knowledge of God and full ecstasy. Okay, so who can name the 5 levels of consciousness? Brahmapucham. Yes. Or Jnanamoya. Either Manamoya or Jnanamoya. Yeah.
And then fourth is Vijnanamaya,
Yes.
and fifth is Anandamaya.
Yes. So these are 5 levels of consciousness. Okay. So, Omar, what's the 4th level of consciousness? You just heard her say it. Can you say it? Were you listening when she spoke?
No, I was like,
What were you doing? You were what?
facing out.
So what's the 4th level of consciousness?
Vijnana.
Yes, Vijnanamoya. How do you describe it? What's Vijnanamoya mean? You see it in the notes? Come on, wake up and pay attention. You're supposed to sleep at night and be awake during the day so you can learn something. Okay, so now there are certain symptoms that differentiate a human being from an animal. And that is human beings' ability to understand God. So what are the 3 levels of self-realization? Who can answer that? Sanskriti, you know the 3 levels of self-realization? This differentiates a human being from an animal. Animals like to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. But a real human being is interested in self-realization. So what are those 3 levels, Sanskriti?
Understanding the difference between the body and the soul.
That's 1st level.
Understanding the difference between the individual soul and the supreme soul or Paramatma.
That's the 2nd level.
Understanding that Krishna is the ultimate source of everything.
Yes, that's the 3rd and most profound level. That the Paramatma, the living entities, the material nature, everything is coming from Krishna. Therefore, one should surrender to Krishna and become a sincere devotee and engage in devotional service. Okay, so now we have differentiated between an animal and a human being. Did you see any human beings at the 4th of July celebration in Sammamish?
Yeah,
You did?
a lot.
You saw a lot of human beings?
I saw a lot in Seattle.
A lot of what?
Seattle. I went to Seattle. My dad has a clear view of the pilots at his office, so we went there.
No, but did you see human beings or did you see animals? How do you know the difference between a human being and an animal?
Or human being.
Yes?
You have to do this. You.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Human being
comes to temple and is a devotee of Krishna.
Well, human being, give you a more general understanding of the difference. Human being is interested in self-realization, and animals are only interested in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So therefore, let me ask the question again. How many human beings did you see at the Sammamish 4th of July celebration? Yes.
Only the people, well, about 1%.
Not even.
Yeah, because we had devotees.
Yeah, but even some of the devotees were not acting like human beings. Right? They were not thinking about self-realization. They were thinking about, different things. I'm not going to go into the details, but you see my point.
How much French fries should we make today?
But for the most part, you hardly saw any human beings there. They were all acting like animals, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. They were not really interested in self-realization. They were really interested in fireworks, hamburgers, hot dogs, and light swords and whatever. Okay. So it's very rare to see a human being. Go ahead.
Okay, play a normal.
Pranay is a noob.
So bring your notes tomorrow. Study these notes. Understand the difference in a human being and an animal. Understand what are the 5 levels of consciousness. Understand what differentiates a human being from an animal. And then we'll continue tomorrow. I have to go right now. I'm going to another animal festival. Yes.